Hello there. Today is the 20th of October 2017, and if you know me or have watched any of my videos in the past, but probably more if you know me, you'll know that I'm a person who likes to mark a moment, and I'm definitely a person that give you a little analogy. If I was walking down a road, for example, let's just go to the world of metaphor for a moment. If I was walking down a road and the road itself was not very clear, just the kind of way ahead, and I tripped over a rock, and that there was a way for me to leave a sign for people saying there's a rock here that I didn't see, be careful, I would do that. This is that. And it's also me marking a moment because it's pretty significant. As I said, today is the 20th of October 2017, and on the 20th of October 2016, exactly 1 year ago today, which would have been a Thursday, I filmed what would turn out to be the final episode that I hosted of Now We're Talking on That's Manchester. And it was my 52nd episode. And I wanted to tell my That's Manchester story for quite a while. Because at the time when I was told that Dan Cass, the owner of the station and of a lot of kind of Your TV and that's all these kind of different areas, I was told on the following Tuesday after I'd filmed on the Thursday, I was kind of called down in the morning before anyone got there. And it was just the young lady who's kind of the head of the news team and who really manages the station. I was told that Dan Cass didn't want me on air anymore. And now there had been a complaint made to first the station and then to Ofcom. The complaint being due impartiality, that there was no due impartiality on a particular episode, which was, I believe, aired on October the 8th, 2016. And there's a lot of chat about Theresa May, and we were still in the deep aftermath of Brexit with all the kind of all the stuff that was going on in Britain, the rising racism and homophobia, in real right-wing thinking. The thing was that I'd never been told ever at any point throughout 11 months, 52 episodes of Now We're Talking, and about 12, 13 episodes of the Daily Rundown, a different show on the same channel, and being a guest also on the Daily Rundown, not just hosting it. I'd never been told that on Now We're Talking there had to be an opposing opinion, that I should, as host, play devil's advocate and, say, oh, well, isn't Theresa May a good person? Kind of thing. I've never been told that. So I'm going to take you right back to the very beginning, and I'll try and make it as quick as I can, because I am doing this also very much for me. And it's funny because I've thought about doing this video, like I say, many times, but 2 weeks and 2 days after I was told I was off air, when I was still kind of dealing with the grief of suddenly being off air, when I devoted so much of my time and energy, and my husband was fully supporting everything I was doing, I was still kind of hoping that, or thinking that it was just a temporary thing. And 2 weeks and 2 days later, an horrific thing happened to me and my husband. We were the victims of an armed robbery, men in balaclavas, face masks, claw hammers and knives. And that then became my reality for many months, dealing with that. And so I never really had the time to grieve about this loss, or to get angry about it. And I am angry about it, and I've got every right to be angry about it. So I'm going to take you right back to the beginning. Found out that a couple of guys I knew were hosting this show on That's Manchester, and one of them posted on Facebook one day and just kind of said, I'm looking for guests for a TV show. And I was like, hello, please, Paul. And so I started as a guest on Now We're Talking. And this one particular day, I'd been a guest a couple of times. And then this one particular day, I was a guest with a lovely young lady called Julia Bell, who's smashing. Look her up. She does all sorts on YouTube. Really, really nice girl. Oh, you are kidding me. Hello? Yeah, I'm in. I've just tried recording the second segment twice and it said there's no sound. But that was my mum on the phone, so I had to break it then. My mum basically called me down and said, come down, someone here, you've not seen since you were 2. And I goes down and she says, used to play with him at your Auntie Amy's many years ago. And something must have happened when you were playing together because you're both gay. Oof. Tongue of a wasp dressed as a bee, my mother. Anyway, let's get back to the story. So anyway, I met Julia Bell as a guest on the show, and that was great. And then as a guest a couple more times, and everything was great and fine and dandy. And then one of the guys who was currently hosting the show said he couldn't do it anymore. He was starting moving to a new business with his partner and couldn't do it anymore. And then the initial guy said he wanted a break from it. And I had a screen test in the studio, which was basically sat in front of the camera reading the auto cue for a couple of minutes. The young lady that, as I said before, runs the station, head of the news team, said, brilliant, came across really natural. I was reading somebody else's script. And me and Julia, we had a meeting. The one guy was going doing the business, the other guy just didn't want to do the show anymore and basically did this motion, and it was handed over to myself and Julia. And at the time, it was live, which was a fantastic experience actually, doing live TV, has to be said. It was live, and it was also daily. And then as we took over, it was being changed. It was going to be a pre-recorded show, and it was going to air at the weekends instead, twice on a Saturday, twice on a Sunday. And so me and Julia took over, and I filmed on a Thursday and my episode aired on a Saturday. Julia filmed on a Friday, hers aired on the Sunday. And there we were, the two new hosts of Now We're Talking on That's Manchester. And we were literally left to it. We obviously knew the format of the show, which was to gather a load of popular news stories, about 6 or 8, and chat about them with your guests. And we did that happily and lovely. Myself and Julia even did a couple of episodes together where she had me as a guest or I had her as a guest, and we both really enjoyed it. And then we kind of, Julia was doing a lot of other stuff. Like I said, look her up, Julia Bell, as in Belle. And we started to work kind of completely separately. She was doing her episode, I was doing my episode. I started a group on Facebook for friends and guests of the show, started a Twitter account for the show, gave a Facebook page to the show. Twitter account soon got up to like 300 followers. Facebook page was around 500, and all the guests and friends were in the group, and it was great so that I could kind of plan ahead, really planned ahead for like a month at a time with guests, just to make sure it was diverse, and things carried on like that for a while. And then I was asked a couple of times if I would host a daily show, which was live in the evenings and then was repeated twice the next day, called the Daily Rundown. And that was a very, very different kind of show because the script, the entire autocue was done for you. It was a fully produced show. So it was just a case of sitting there, reading the autocue, meeting the guests beforehand, neighbours drilling, just moved in, loved the couple. Lost my thread. Oh yeah, so the Daily Rundown was a very different show, and I noted the difference. The only difference was that the Daily Rundown was produced and scripted for you. You just presented it, but it was still very much the same thing. It was talking about stories, and I thought, Now We're Talking is very, very similar to this. It'd be good if it was a bit different, and maybe if it was a bit more kind of local and get local musicians in. And Julie was doing exactly the same thing. We both got kind of bands in, and sometimes played their videos, and we got in local charities and local community groups, and it was great, and everything was going kind of really well, and it was really nice as well because I obviously came across as, exactly what I am, a very approachable person, so that people were stopping me on the bus or in the street. You do that show, don't you? I'm telling them, like, yeah, hug me, damn it. I'm just going to grab a cigarette. I need a cigarette. Sorry, yes, I smoke, and I know it's terrible, but I'm just not long back from Greece and cigarettes are cheap. So I bought some. So sue me. So carried on like this for a while, and then Julia started to get really, really busy. She did this great series called Breakout. Again, look it up, it's on YouTube, to help people in the industry. She was doing lots more things as well. Busy, busy girl. It's because she's gorgeous and really good at what she does. So the shows that she couldn't do, this is why I ended up doing like 52, even though it was only one episode a week. And it was only 10.5 months I was there. I covered for Julia a bit as well. So I kind of tweaked the format of Now We're Talking because nothing was done on that. It was all left to us. We found our own stories. We found our own guests. There was very, very little input at all, apart from once when the young lady at the station said, Paul, I had a look at your episode, and I think you're talking about veganism a bit too much, and it might come across as biased, and like it might bother people. And I said, well, it's not coming from my point of view, and it wasn't, because at the time there were, and they're still there, of course, a lot of stories about the environment and how animal agriculture was really affecting the environment. And there was this about the complaint to Ofcom. This is one of the possible things. There was a point when I used to tweet, we're always looking for new guests on the show and blah, blah, blah. And then I got this message on Twitter from a guy saying, oh, that was it. If you followed, now we're talking on Twitter, you got an automatic message saying, thanks for following us, blah, 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 we are a show, blah, blah, blah. And we're always looking for guests. If you have anything interesting to say, I think you would get in touch. It was that kind of message. So this guy replied to that message and said, okay, when do you want me on? Now, don't forget, this was an auto message, and I was like, oh, hi, are you interested in being a guest? Tell us a bit about yourself, because it's not just like anybody can come on the show. So he then says, you sent me a message saying, we want you on the show, so when do you want me on? And I was like, I tried to explain, no, that's just an auto message, thanking people for following us and telling them a bit about it, and saying we're always looking for new messages, new guests. So this guy says then, no, you asked me to be on the show, and now you're saying you don't want me on the show, so I'm going to report you to Ofcom. Now, I showed this to the young lady that ran things down there, and she said, and I quote, "Don't worry about it, Paul. He's just a disgruntled ex-presenter from here." Okay, I thought. So I carried on doing the show, wearing my heels, which was amazing, having my mohawk, with my little sound machine. Do you remember my little sound machine, any of you? I shall just grab it very quickly. This was it. I had it quite a lot. I can't remember my favourites now. No. I had some real favourite. Here's one. When it was an awful story, Anyway, had a lot of fun. Met a lot of great people. A lot of people became regular guests because they were interesting and funny and so on and so forth. And throughout September and October 2016, I was mad busy at the station, but I'm going to just go a bit before that first, because there was a point when it was really difficult my husband was working full time, and so I couldn't claim any benefits at all, but I was doing the show, and that took quite a lot of time. Thursdays and Mondays were dedicated to the station. Thursdays to do the show, Mondays to go down and upload the show onto YouTube. And I was desperate for some work. I ended up applying for 64 part-time jobs. But the owner of the station, Dan Cass, had said, we might be able to offer you a bit of work here, Paul, on the phone lines upstairs, selling advertising space. And I said, I've done that before, I've done telesales, that'd be brilliant. And I followed that up with quite a few emails to Dan Cass, and he never responded to one of them after that point. After saying we might be able to find you some work here, never responded to me again at any point. So that was a bit of a bugbear as well. But I was totally dedicated to this show, and it honestly became one of the greatest loves of my life. And it always will be. Those 10.5 months, all of that was absolutely fabulous. And so we get to the show on October the 8th, and the entire section 4 was dedicated completely to veganism. Had a guest on that I knew anyway, who runs a great piano company. And he was also a part of a group called Manchester Pig Save, and they would go to a slaughterhouse in Ashton and bear witness to the pigs going in and try and show them a little bit of comfort or give them a bit of water or whatever. And this guy had been receiving death threats since becoming, bearing witness at this slaughterhouse. So that's another possibility about the complaint, because even though the slaughterhouse name wasn't mentioned, we just said, you know, a slaughterhouse not too far from here, and you can find it on Google if you look it up. So October the 8th came and went in the next week, and was told, Paul, there's been a complaint made about you being biased against Theresa May. So I was like, oh dear, right, okay. I didn't know that I couldn't be. No one's ever told me that I couldn't be. I've worked for, 10 months on this show, developing my personality as a presenter and a real person, which is why I was so approachable. And then I went in the next week and filmed as normal. And I went in the next week and filmed as normal, which was this week, a year ago today. And then on the Tuesday, following the Thursday, the 20th of October 2016, when I filmed my last episode, well, on the Monday, actually, I got an email off the young lady who runs the station saying, Paul, could you come down at some point tomorrow, by any chance? We need to have a chat. And I said, yeah, no problem. By this time, I'd got a job on a bar. And I was due to work at 12 o'clock, but I said, yeah, I can come down very early in the morning if that's any good. So I got down there at 9:30 in the morning, and we went and sat in the studio, and she said the complaint has been forwarded to Ofcom by the complainer, and Dan doesn't want you on air anymore. He doesn't want you hosting anything here. And the floor just opened up underneath me because it was like, and that's it, done. Please don't talk about this on social media. And I was, well, I burst out crying in the studio. I cried on the bus on the way home. I was devastated, but I was hoping that it would be sorted out and that things would be fixed, and that I could go on and say my apologies to any viewers who felt that I was biased. I was simply sharing my own opinions and thoughts, which is what I've done for 10 months on this show. But of course I was never given that opportunity. And that was it. That was it. I was done. And there was another, so we've got the disgruntled guy on Twitter who said he was going to complain to Ofcom. Then we've got the possibility of slaughterhouse workers who'd already been giving death threats to people on Facebook for bearing witness. And could that have been a possibility? And then you've got the fact that the guy that handed the show over to me and Julia had, unbeknownst to me, been saying to her for a couple of months, if you, next time you want a day off or you can't thingy, I'll host it for you. And phone me, not Paul. And although that's a misquote, he didn't say not Paul. But me and him had been really good friends, and he'd never said that to me. He never said, I want to come back on and host again at any point. So there are three very strange things there, but the thing that cut me up the most about it all was that I was completely ostracised. Nobody got in touch with me. Nobody messaged me and asked me if I was okay. I was just out. And then, of course, like I said, 2 weeks and 2 days later, the horror happened, and that became the focus of the last almost 12 months, culminating only very recently in the sentencing of one of the culprits, and me being able to say, yeah, pretty much past all the psychological crap that came with that now. So consider this my sign in the road about the rock that you can't see. Maybe I should have already had a pre-warning about the disgruntled ex-presenter threatening to call Ofcom. Why was he so disgruntled? You don't think about these things at the time, do you? But those like September and October, I was never off the channel. I was covering for Julia quite a bit because she was mega busy. And for the final week, the final 2 weeks of the Daily Rundown, I was asked to host, probably because they couldn't get anyone else, but still, all of that stuff made me feel valued and a part of the team and important. And then after that, you know, after the horror happened, and I was kind of sharing through the Twitter account I'd created, the news articles and stuff. And then I started sharing stuff that I was doing myself on YouTube, and I got an email from the young lady down there saying, can you not use the Twitter account for that? It's about the show here, it's not about you. And I never messaged her back. I was really annoyed about it because Julia had done this series called Breakout, and I'd done a segment of my show about it and mentioned it. And that, it's like that week, only 3 parts of the show got aired. And the final part didn't, because it was about, because I'd mentioned this Breakout series Julia was doing, and then I was told you can't do things like that on the TV, on this show. You can tweet about them though, by all means. So it was okay to tweet about Breakout, but it wasn't okay to tweet about something I was doing on YouTube. It's like I was being ostracised and silenced constantly. But yeah, That's Manchester went on to say that I had been trained and had not adhered to that training when being biased against Theresa May on October the 8th. And that's bullcrap, utter bullcrap, because the only training I received at That's Manchester was how to do the auto cue. Oh, and how to add videos and pictures so that they could easily fit into the show. And I asked for those bits of training. So, yeah, there is my sign in the road, and let this video be my official goodbye and marking of the moment for 10.5 months that were amazing and brilliant. And I hope that some of the young people down there realise that to just ostracise people like most of you did is really cruel and nasty. And the really annoying part about that is that they knew that I was the kind of person that would never do that to anybody, because the guy that handed the show over to us went on to do a radio show in Manchester, and for about 6-7 weeks I went down on a Wednesday morning and was his kind of main guest on the show, and he was still suffering with a lot of mental health issues, and sometimes I would text him and never get a reply, and I was urging people, even though you don't get a reply off him, please text him and just let him know you're thinking about him. And you know, strange that I never got replies, isn't it? So, draw your own conclusions about who made the complaint to Ofcom and why. This is my sign in the road. Be careful of the rock. And until next time, please be excellent to each other.